All right. Well, I have the next hour and hour and 45 minutes before we take a break. And they just told me, oh, you got 3 hours or whatever for be next and do whatever you want to do. So I figured I would do a overview. Now, this slide deck has 29 slides in it. I'm not going to show 29 slides. I'm probably going to show 3 slides. And then the rest of it's going to be all demo of the product. So you can see what it looks like. And then we'll take a tea break. And then after that, we'll do a migration session. So to show you how you get from your current product you have to the vNext product. Because some things that you guys can do today to start preparing to get yourself ready for vNext, because it is quite a big paradigm shift from what you guys know today. So that's what we'll do. Again, you guys will get all these slides when we're all done. I'm not sure how Cliff and Rob are going to make that available. They have a website or whatever, but I'll give them the slides that you guys will have all 3 decks that I'm doing, and we'll go from there. And again, at any point in time, ask questions. But again, I'm only going to show a few slides. The main slide I'm going to show is one called the overview of pillars. In our environment, what we call pillars are the large investment areas into the new product. So we'll talk about the 3 big areas or pillars that we invested in the vNext product to hopefully give you incentive to move from where you are today, whether it's ConfigMgr 2007, whether it's, anybody still running SMS 2003 in here? Okay, a couple of you. You know SMS 2003 is pretty well out the door now. There's no official support for it anymore. It's extended support you can get, but other than that, it's out of product support. So, and you certainly cannot upgrade or migrate to vNext from SMS 2003. But anyway, whether it's SMS 2003 or ConfigMgr or competitive product or you're non-managed, hopefully these pillars, or again the big areas of investment, are beneficial for you. And just the 3 listed are empower, unify, and control are the 3 pillars. So this is the main slide I'm going to show for this presentation, and I'm going to talk real quickly about these bullet points, but it's going to wind up being probably a 15-minute discussion real quickly, going through the bullet points, and then I'll just kick over and do some demonstrations for the next hour plus. So the 3 big bullet points or pillars are empower, unify, and control. And at a high level, empower means giving end users more capability of being involved in the management process. And what we really mean by that is that you as admins can now think about delivering software to users. Where in the past, you probably in your current product primarily deploy software to their systems and not so much the user base. So we're doing a lot of things in vNext to make it easier for you to deploy software to the end user. The middle column, Unify, we're doing things to help reduce the infrastructure that you have to manage your environment. Reducing sites, reducing site systems, making it a more secure environment, and making your easier to troubleshoot if you have to do troubleshooting. And the last column is Control. Giving the admin a better experience, making your infrastructure, your environment more secure, and we used to call this keeping people happy or making people happy. Things that people have requested for a number of years that we never get around to, and finally throwing some of those things in. So, empower. We do a pretty good job in the current product of deploying software to systems. So you have a lot of good controls over your software distribution technology and getting stuff out. But it's kind of hard to effectively manage software delivery to end users. If you want to make sure that software is only delivered to a user when they're logged on to their primary system, it's not that easy to do in the current product. So what we're doing in vNext is making that a whole lot easier. We're not removing any capabilities from software distribution to systems. But you'll hear us, the big thing at the top of the circle there, the drum says user-centric client management. We're focusing in vNext on delivering software to users. Again, that doesn't mean you can't deliver to systems. It just means you're trying to make it easier for you. So the admin can think about the user. The admin can think about their intent on that application and making it tied to the user. So first thing we're doing is we're moving to an application model. So today, you guys, when you do software distribution, you create a package. So a package is a metadata that points to some directory in a hard drive somewhere with some files that you want to make available to end users or to the system based on some command line, which is your program. So you create a package, you create X number of programs for that package, and then you advertise a program from the package to the users that are based in a collection, and users being systems primarily. I know you can do user-based delivery as well. And that's what you currently have. We still have that in vNext. For those of you that want to stick in the old world, that don't want to learn anything new, don't want to progress your environments, you can still create packages and programs. We no longer call them advertisements, they're now called deployments. And you can still deploy a program from a package. However, all the cool stuff I'm going to talk about today and show you is all based on applications. An application is a model that includes a lot more capabilities than you have today. Applications are state-based. So I, as the admin, can specify an intent on an application. So I can state that an application is required, which you guys know is mandatory in the current product, or it's available, which again you guys know as optional in the current product. And the cool thing is, if I state that the intent of an application is required, I deploy the application out, it gets installed in a system. End user goes to add and remove programs, finds that application, and they uninstall it from add and remove programs. My intent as the admin was that it's required in that system, we're going to reinstall it automatically. You don't have to create any new advertisements for it or rerun process. We do that automatically for you. You can control how frequently we check to see the application policies and what their state is. The default is every 7 days. Applications have multiple what we call deployment types. A deployment type is, which you guys would know today is a program. A program is a command line to install. We now have deployment types. But the cool thing about deployment types is you can have multiple deployment types per application. The example would be today you guys want to have physical applications that have MSIs for installers. And then you have virtual applications you can integrate with our R2 product. And by the way, I didn't tell you, but everything in R2 is also included in our R3 product. So all those R2 capabilities you have installed today, you also will get them with R3. You don't have to uninstall R2, or you don't have to first install R2, then install R3. You'll get them all with R3. But anyway, so in R2, R3, you have app V integration, so virtual applications. But it's two separate packages. In vNext, an application can have an MSI deployment type, MSI exec /q/i, whatever your MSI is. It can also have an app V deployment type, so a virtual application. It could also have a Windows Mobile Cab deployment type. So my scenario would be with my application deployment types is that I'm saying this application is required on the system, and if the user's logged on to one of his or her primary systems, run the MSI-based deployment type. So I want to install physically on the box if I'm on my primary system. If I'm on my non-primary system, somebody else's computer, I still want that application. But don't install it there because they don't want me installing my junk on their box. Instead, give me a virtual version, an app V version of that application. But same application. If I'm sitting on a shared kiosk where they don't have app V installed and I don't want to install my code down there because it's not my primary system, give me a terminal services version of that same application. If I'm on my Windows mobile phone, I need that app, give me the Windows Mobile Cab version of that application. So tie the application to the user and present it to the user differently depending upon where their current state is, their current environment is in the infrastructure. So I just mentioned the primary system. We have numerous different ways in vNext, and I'll show you some of these in the demo, of tying a user to a system, designating that this is Wally's primary system, and if Wally's sitting here, the application is required, go ahead and install it here through the MSI. If I'm sitting on Cliff's computer, don't install it there. Then all that's done through what we call user device affinity, tying users to systems. And then the intelligence around that is built into something we call requirement rules. Today, when you guys are deploying software, you probably have a lot of collections, and those collections are based on applications. You have a collection for Adobe, you have a collection for Office, you have a collection for whatever it is. And you have rules in there that state your queries that state, only install Office 2010 on the system if it already has Office 2007, so you can do an upgrade. If the computer has a 2.2 gigahertz processor or above, if the computer has 4 gig of RAM, if the computer has at least 15 gigabytes of hard disk space, maybe domain membership rules, maybe IP subnets, maybe whatever it is. But you have a lot of complex rules in your collections. In VNext, you don't do that. Your collections are basically grouping of like locations or operating systems. You build the requirements, the intelligence for that application delivery into the application itself through something called requirement rules. So what we do now is you build all those rules on your application, actually on the deployment types. You have different rules for the MSI deployment type than you would have on the app-v deployment type, than you would have on the Windows Mobile Cab deployment type, than you would have on the Terminal Services deployment type. And the rules, when you define the policy and give it to the system, the user, we look at the policy, we run through the requirement rules. Oh, do I have enough memory? Do I have enough disk space? Do I have enough processor? Am I on a primary device? Nope. Okay, that deployment type's out. Let's go to the next one. Oh, the app-v, memory, disk space, app-v clients installed. Okay, let me run that one. So you put the intelligence for the application, all the decision making in the application itself. So your collections are all basically dumb collections. You'll see when we get in the demo, we're going to give you 4 system collections. All systems, all, I think it's workstations, all unknown computers, and all Windows mobile devices. That's it. Then we give you one for users, one for groups. But we no longer have all Windows XP systems, all Windows Vista systems, all Windows 7 systems. You create those on your own if you want them. Technically, because of putting all the intelligence in your application, you could have all your deployments going to all systems. And then only the proper computers would install them based on the application and the requirement rules that you have there. We also have dependencies. The example being the app-v version of whatever your application is. Well, you can't run a virtual application unless you have the app-v client installed. So a dependency for the virtual version of Office 2010 would be the Microsoft app-v client would be installed. If it's not installed, you can tell us either to auto-install it, and then that application would have its own requirement rules to see whether or not we could install it, or you can say don't install it and we have a failure because the deployment wasn't met, or dependency wasn't met. So state-based, rules, multiple deployment types, they run off the state, not only state-based, but the response back is not through status message anymore, it's state. Very much like you have with software updates today, or you have with DCM compliance today. It's all based off of state messages and that system workflow. But fixes in there, so it's a little more reliable than what you have today for your state. Applications also have single instance store. So if you have 3 applications that all happen to share files, let's say common DLL, we only store that in the DP once. And then the other 2 applications will point to that one DLL. When the user tries to run that application, get all the files, they'll go to a different location of the hard drive, that DP, to download that appropriate DLL, the shared files. So it only goes across the wire one time, it's only stored on the hard drive one time, so reducing disk consumption. So those are all some of the cool things that we have around the user-centric software delivery, or what we're calling Empower. The middle column there is on Unified, trying to make the requirements of your infrastructure less intense, so it's cheaper for you guys and it's easier to maintain. So less complex in your environment. So the first thing we're doing is we're flattening your hierarchy. Today you guys might have a central site, 1 tier primary sites, a tier of grandchild primary sites, maybe another tier below that, and some secondary sites flowing down off of those. So it takes a while for management stuff that you create in the central site to flow all the way down to those child, grandchild, great-grandchild, whatever it is, primary sites you have. And client data. It takes a long time for client data to flow back up all the way up to your central site. We're reducing that latency for the data delivery and for the management infrastructure going down by flattening your hierarchy. So in VNext, the big change there is 1 central site, 1 tier of primary sites, and that's as low as you go for primary sites. No parent-child relationships between primary sites anymore. And then you can have a tier below your primary sites of secondary sites if you want them. You don't have to have secondary sites anymore. So the latency for data down, data up is much quicker or much lower latency because of the fact it's a flatter hierarchy. And because of some things we're doing, you can reduce primary sites, you can reduce secondary sites, so your server infrastructure costs, your licensing costs go down. So today you may very well have multiple primary sites, maybe parent-child relationship, maybe sibling sites, because of numerous reasons. One might be, I need to separate my server guys from the desktop guys. And it's pretty hard to do in the current product. So if I'm managing the servers, and Cliff is managing the desktops. But we both have to be able to create collections of our own systems. And I want to ensure that Cliff never accidentally, or on purpose, gets any of my servers in his workstation collections, because then he might send a patch job that might accidentally reboot one of my servers during the non-working hours. So it's, again, hard to maintain that in the current product effectively without having some Uber admin creates all the collections and then limits me to my collections, and I never see Cliff's collections and he never sees mine. Unless you do that and you want to give me the ability to create collections, it's pretty hard to do. So what most people do is they create two separate sites. One site for the servers, one site for the desktops, and then a central site so I get consolidated reporting. In vNext, you no longer have to do that. I can have one site for all servers and all desktops, and I use the new security system in vNext that I'll show you to segment or isolate Cliff from my servers and isolate me from his desktops. So I would never see his desktops. If I create a collection, I'm collection limited to the server collection. If he creates a collection, he's collection limited to the desktop collection. He wouldn't even see my collection. He wouldn't see any of my servers. Any applications that are server specific, Cliff wouldn't see. Any applications that are workstation specific, I wouldn't see. So we isolate by security roles and security scopes. You might also have separate primary sites because you have different client agent settings. So I have, maybe the server guys want to do hardware inventory on a daily basis. Maybe the desktop guys, because there's 10 times more or 100 times more desktops and servers, you want to take inventory weekly. And I know you can use the SDK and you create local policies to change that timing. But most people don't, so they create separate sites for that. They have different client agent settings. In vNext, you don't have to. In fact, client agent settings are now hierarchy-wide, not site-wide. But if I want to differentiate between servers and desktops, or maybe for servers, for example, I want to have remote control, but obviously in a data center, nobody's there logged on to answer yes to, hey, can I remote control your box? But you want it corporate-wide for all your end users for security. So now what I do is I create what's called custom client agent settings. I create a custom agent setting which includes remote control enabled, remote control permission required, separate one for servers. And I set permission required equals no. I then take that custom client agent setting, which becomes a policy, assign it to the server, my data center collection. Everybody else gets the site-wide or hierarchy-wide settings, but this collection gets my custom client agent settings. So all client agent settings are hierarchy-wide, and if I want to modify, create custom settings. So reducing another need for separate primary sites in your hierarchy. A lot of times people will use secondary sites, and the primary reason for a secondary site is to control the distribution of content from your primary location down to this remote location with X number of systems down there. And you don't want to just put a DP down there, because then when the site server distributes the content, it's unthrottled, it's unscheduled, it's right now uncompressed traffic going down that wire, that DP. So you put a secondary site there so you can have the senders. And so you can schedule, you can bandwidth throttle, use compressed traffic to control when that primary site server gets that content down to that child site. In vNext, we're putting sender capabilities on our DPs. So you don't have to have a secondary site there anymore. All you want to manage is that download flow of the WAN traffic for content replication. So you have the scheduling and the throttling and the bandwidth stuff on a standard DP now.
Wally, is there any advantage to having a secondary site now?
Yes. So you still may want to have a secondary site because I want to manage the upward flow of my client data, or I want to manage the policy traffic. If I want to manage client policy requests, content location requests, if I want to manage the client data uploads, I can have a secondary site with the proxy MP and possibly software update point, whatever other site systems clients might need down there, so I can then use the senders to get the data back up. If I just put a DP there, clients are going to go across your WAN to the MP at your primary site to do policy requests, content location requests, and report data. In vNext, secondary sites always have an MP now. When you install a secondary site, it's going to have a proxy management point, or just a management point, along with a DP. Secondary sites are also going to have SQL Server now. However, for secondary sites, we can use SQL Express. And the reason we're going to SQL on a secondary site now is we're getting rid of, for the most part, the file replication that you guys know today of primary site talking to child site or child talking to primary site using the inboxes. We're going to SQL replication as opposed to our own proprietary file replication. And because of that, we have to have SQL now on a secondary site. So we can use replication to get data down. We still do have the senders and file replication for content. So your package, your patch, your OS content will go through the senders and the file replication. But all of your management stuff, collections, applications, all that metadata you create, that's going to go through SQL replication. And client data, when it's reported up, it'll go through through SQL replication as well.
Do the branch distribution points still exist then?
All I can tell you is in beta 1 we still have branch DPs. And that may change in beta 2, which I can't state yet. But that may change because branch DPs support workstation OSs. Right now DPs require server OSs. So again, that could change in the future. So look for announcements sometime in the future as to changing of those. But branch DPs only have bits throttling, which bits is nothing compared to what a sender can do as far as throttling controls. So it's very, very basic.
Are there any improvements around high availability?
Any improvements in high availability? We're skipping that question. We're going to skip that question.
Okay.
Not a lot. So we still have some clustered SQL Server. The only other thing we're really adding in vNext for high availability is multiple SMS providers per site. So if your SMS provider is your bottleneck, or you want to make sure it's not the reason I can't use my site because my provider down, I can have multiple providers now per site. But we're not doing any other clustering of any other site system roles or anything else. No. Now the positive side to that is we're hoping you don't have to have as much because of the nature of the data that gets generated in vNext, and with the flatter hierarchy, you can very easily recover a site through the new repair process. And I guess I'll get into this now. I wasn't really going to, but in vNext, there's 4 types of data. You have what's called global data, you have site data, you have local data, and you have content. Global data is, for the most part, anything that you and admin creates. So you create a collection, you create an application, you create an update group, which you guys know is update list for software updates. You add a new user to the console and give them a security role or security scope, whatever. All that stuff is global data. Global data replicates to every primary site in your environment. Today in your environment, if you guys go to your central site, you create a collection, you create a package, you create an advertisement that replicates down your hierarchy. But if I'm at a child primary, I create any one of those objects. It stays at my site and maybe down to my child if I have any children. In vNext, that goes up and to your sibling sites, that same data. Now, I control that through security so that Cliff doesn't see my server collections and I don't see his desktop collections. But the data goes everywhere. Now, client data doesn't go everywhere. So when a client creates inventory, client creates state, client creates software metering results and so on, that goes from its site up to the central site for consolidated reporting, but doesn't go to any other sites in your environment. So client data is one location, your primary site, and then it goes to the central site. But administrative stuff that you guys create goes everywhere. And secondary sites is a subset of data that goes to secondary sites, so I kind of exclude that. But there is SQL replication there for data to get down to SQL replication, the secondary sites. You just threw me off. I threw myself off. I won't blame anybody in here. It'll come back to me. Anyway, so data is going all over the place. Global data. Site data is like client data that goes to the local primary site and it goes up. Oh, the other thing I was going to say is one of the cool things we're doing now in vNext is, if you remember at R3 I talked about discovery, AD discovery. You create your discovery records at your primary site, goes up to your parent, processed there and out of that database, then it replicates up to the central site, processed there, out of the database. So the same DDR has been processed 3 times in this scenario. Grandchild, child, and central. In VNext, it's processed 1 time. The site where that data is owned is processed, and then it gets replicated up or down appropriately. SQL replication replicates it down, puts it directly in the database. So no multiple times processing the same data. So it's processed by one site server once, and the rest of it's SQL dumped in the database. So much, much faster processing of data in your infrastructure. So reducing the hierarchy, possibly getting rid of secondary sites if a standard DP with throttling is good enough for you. If you need the client upload stuff, then a secondary site. Using SQL replication as opposed to file replication, so much better, much more efficient replication of data than what we have today. If I show you my inboxes today, they're all still there, but hopefully in beta 2, most of the inboxes will go away. And then again, it's primarily going to be used for content replication, not the normal administrative stuff that you guys do. I'll probably hit some more things there, but that's the big thing in Unify is reducing the infrastructure requirements for you guys. And then control. Control means making a more secure environment, giving the admins a better experience, and making people happy. So better experience for the admins, no more MMC, which doesn't crush anybody's feelings at all, particularly not ours. We're now going with the System Center UI framework, so very similar to what Randy just showed with the CP Select, the same type of wonder bars and navigation pane and so on. You'll see that coming up very shortly when I stop talking on this slide. So no more MMC interface. Better security, again, with the security roles and security scopes. I don't have to maintain separate MMC consoles for all my users. So if Rob is only in charge of doing help desk, so all they should see is collections and read resource and use remote tools. If I want to control him and prevent him from looking at other nodes in the console, I have to create a custom MMC. And then Cliff, if he's only for software distribution, I have to create another custom MMC. Don't have to do that in VNext. The console automatically adjusts based on the login ID with the security roles I have and the security scopes. So all 3 of us can share a single box, have one MMC there, and we only see, the term we use in our product is, show me what's relevant to me. And the console renders itself appropriately to just what's appropriate for that logged on user. And I'll show you that in the demo. Security. So the security stuff there, as well as compliance security, software updates. So for the most part, software updates in VNext is what you guys know today. You synchronize with Microsoft Update, you get a list of updates there, you run the DSUW, you pick the updates you want, and deploy them out through an update group now instead of update list, out to your target systems. What's really changed, though, is one of the complaints we always get from people is WSUS is so much easier. I create an auto-deployment rule in WSUS, and I forget about it. We're now going to have auto-deployment rules in VNext. So I can have an auto-deployment rule that says, on a monthly basis, whenever this type of update comes in, let's say vendor Microsoft, or severity level is important, or whatever, automatically deploy those to my target systems. And so it's a create one or multiple rules that you want, and it's all done. So I don't have to go run the DSUW on a monthly basis. So that's the big thing. We also now are offering full support for Forefront. So we're going to support definition updates, which we don't do today in our product. So support definition updates, and you'll be able to manage your infrastructure Forefront through ConfigMgr. In the compliance area for what you guys know as DCM, we don't call it DCM anymore, even though the beta 1 stuff still says DCM all over the place, especially in the reports. It's now called settings management. And what we're allowing you to do now is still create configuration items and configuration baselines for looking at systems that are compliant and non-compliant. But in the current product, when you're out of compliant, tough luck, that's where we end. Now, again, the R3 thing makes it easier for you to build collections off of non-compliance and you can target software distribution to them. In VNext, if you can remediate via a script, a registry setting, or WMI setting, we can automatically remediate non-compliant systems. You create your CI that says, I'm looking at this registry setting. If it's not set to this value, set it there. And you say enforce. When you then create your baseline, say remediate non-compliant systems. That's all the hardware it is. And then we do our scanning on that client. Oh, the registry value is not set the way you want. Because most people have corporate registry settings they have to have, or value set in WMI. And you can go ahead and easily reset those via our engine now, without having to go create software distribution packages to remediate and set things back in compliance. Keeping people happy or making people happy. Some of you that use SMS 2003 used to like our remote control code because you could log off a user and log them back on so you could troubleshoot their profile issues. Or if the system was locked, you could connect back up to it. And in 2007, we took away the gold key functionality. Well, it's back in vNext. So the remote control gold key there, so I can remote control a box with nobody logged on, the system's locked, or I can log off the user and log the user back on, or watch him do so, or I can log on with a different account and do that type of troubleshooting. We've switched protocols again, so it's now going to be over live mesh as our protocol with some RDP stuff. So anyway, those are the 3 big bullets or pillars that we have. I'm going to skip about 24 slides. Again, you guys get all these slides, you go look at them, and you look at the, yes, ooh, cool, marketing did something good. I'm not going to show you Beta 2 yet, but this is a screenshot of the Beta 2 console. You're going to see Beta 1. If you look at the top, a ribbon bar. So what you guys know is the actions pane in the current console, the far right-hand pane. In vNext, you'll see it over here as a task pane. That goes away in Beta 2, and you have a ribbon going across the top. So easier accessing some stuff and better discoverability. And I'll demo this live. So oh, distribution point groups, DPs. Some changes there besides the bandwidth throttling and stuff. Is that on DP groups today in the product they're dumb. That if I create a group and I put 5 DPs in my group and I add a package to that group, or add the group to the package, all 5 DPs will get that package. But then I add DP6 to that group, it doesn't know what was sent there before. In vNext, they're state-based. So if I add a new DP to that group, he gets all the packages or applications, not packages, all the applications that were previously assigned to that DP group. If I remove a package or an application from a DP group, it's removed from all the DPs automatically. So state-based. SQL reporting services. That's the only reporting engine we got now. So if you guys aren't using it today, get familiar with SRS and do the integration with ConfigMgr, because that's the only way you do reporting. Client health. The biggest problem that everybody in the world has is with client health. And let's say 98%, 99% of the problems are WMI based. Am I correct? Anybody want to disagree? Lee, you do. When we did the ConfigMgr 2007 TAP airlift, the #1 request from the TAP customers is fix client health, because we have a problem with it. It costs us so much time maintaining our clients. And so what we did is we created the client status reporting thing in R2, which would just tell you when clients aren't talking to your site, not sending the proper data, but no remediation. So this is going to be fully remediation for client health. So on a daily basis, we have a scheduled task that runs in all your clients. The scheduled task is going to run and go through an XML file which controls what we want to check. Is the bit server set to automatically start, and is it running? If not, set it to automatically start and start it. Is the SMS client agent or SMS agent host service set to automatically start and running? If not, set it to start, automatic start, and start it up. Because sometimes end users, you have some smart end users, and sometimes they figure out that, oh, when SMS runs, my system gets a little slow for inventory. So they go in there and they disable the SMS agent host service. We're going to reset it automatically on a daily basis for them. Now, hopefully your guys aren't admins, so they can't do that kind of stuff, but sometimes they do have it. But again, the biggest problem is WMI. So we're going to look for the SMS namespaces in WMI. If we can't access them, depending upon the OS you're running, we know what type of checks to run based on Windows XP, Windows Vista, Windows 7, and so on. We're going to run the appropriate diagnostic tools for WMI and fix that repository issue. At worst case, we're going to go ahead and reinstall the SMS agent host service. Automatically reinstall our client to get it back up and running. So on a daily basis, you should have all your clients reporting in, obviously unless they're turned off type stuff. The cool thing is that you can customize this XML. So if you want to have us check other things outside of what we have built in, go ahead and tell us what to do. It's all XML based and we support you modifying it. I don't know if Sam tested out that lab, but I have a lab on, Sam was in the US a few months ago, and he was testing out some of my VNext labs for me, which thank you again. They're all broken, but that's not your fault. And one of the labs is on client health. And what I have is I have a script in there that you run, and it breaks WMI and disables our client agent. And you force client health, and it repairs everything. But then at the end of that, I have you rename the default XML file and create a brand new XML, just paste in XML that I already have, so you're typing in 20 lines. And what we do there is I have you stop the Windows firewall service and then set it to disabled. Then you force another client health service, check, and in 2 seconds, Windows firewall is running again, it's been reset to automatically start. So you customize it to those type of things that you want to. So very cool. And in console, monitoring of that. You can have alerts generated also when things, you drop out of compliance, whatever your threshold is, SLA, and I'll show you that. Mobile device management. If you guys have heard of the System Center Mobile Device Manager product, it's going away. And that team is part of the ConfigMgr team. So MDM is now incorporated inside of VNext. And so basically what you can do in MDM today, you'll be able to do in VNext tomorrow when the product comes out, for the most part. Secure over-the-air enrollment, you treat mobile devices just like you treat desktops and laptops and so on. Before you guys ask, what we've announced support for is Windows Mobile, so Windows Phone, Nokia in Beta 2, and that's all we've announced so far. Some point in the future we will announce additional plans for supporting additional platforms. Don't go asking me if iPhone supported it or anything else. I can't tell you. Sometime in the future, you might hear it. You will hear an announcement about additional things. But until then, Windows Mobile and Nokia in Beta 2. Okay, control. We already did all that. So, OSD. Couple things there. Offline servicing of images. So today you have a WIM file you created for Windows 7. Patch Wednesday rolls around, and I assume it's Wednesday for you guys since it's Tuesday for us. And you get a bunch of patches for your OS. To fix it today, you have to take that WIM, deploy it to a box, patch it, and then recapture it for a new WIM. In VNext, you'll be able to mount that image, inject those updates you already have advertised, deploy that to your systems, and unmount it, resave it back out. Very, very simple to do. Boot media is now hierarchy-wide. Currently, it's boot media per site because it's tied to the MP. So it'll be one boot media for the entire environment. Pre-execution hooks. You can have UI with your pre-execution hooks, so you now ask your end users questions if you want to get more interactive so they can select the right task sequence used. And UI for USMT 4.0 with hard linking. We support it today, but we give you no UI on how to do it. So there'll be some UI around USMT 4.0 and hard linking. Plus the pre-staged media that's in R3 is also in VNext. Okay. Remote control back, settings. Oh, I guess we don't have it in here. Okay, it's in the next slide deck. I'll show you. I'm going to go through all the requirements of operating systems and so on, but it's in the migration deck that we'll go through. A couple of things now. The beta's been out for 5 months now. Came out in May this year. So if you haven't downloaded the beta, you're more than welcome to. We would love to have you download it and play around with your lab. You can't deploy it in production unless you're a TAP customer. Your EULA legally prevents you from deploying in production unless you want to break the law. TAP customers get a special EULA that gives them the rights to, and actually requires them to deploy in production. So you have that availability. We also have a pre-configured VHD if you don't have availability in the lab to download and install. So I created a VHD in Hyper-V that has a Beta 1 site installed, site server as a client, but not a whole lot else configured in there. And you go in there and add in your own clients and so on. But you can download that. It's like 20 gigabytes. But you can download that and have a pre-configured environment just to play around with.
Sorry, question, Wally, but are you going to support VMDK of that?
Am I going to support what?
Are you going to support VMware image of the
No.
VMware?
I'm not going to create any VM. I can install VMware. So. Now, if I could, I would create a VPC version of that image, but we only, I guess I have to break the news now, if you haven't heard. I was going to do this in the other slide and check, but everything in VNext is 64-bit, which means no VPC support, which makes me unhappy because I really like VPC. And again, I'm not creating anything in VMware, so sorry. Hyper-V. So 64-bit, which means I can't use VPC. But 64-bit OS, It is native 64 bits, no more 32-bit running in 64-bit space on the current product. So if you're purchasing new hardware now, get 64-bit capable hardware, and obviously go and install 64-bit OS. We will support 32-bit clients, although we have a native 64-bit client now, where today it's a 32-bit client running on 64-bit, just like the site system. But we will have a new 32-bit and 64-bit client. So we will support 32-bit clients. The only site servers we're going to support in 32-bit are standard distribution points. So we'll support a standard DP, which means SMB-based distribution point on 32-bit. But if you want bits, if you want multicast, if you want app streaming, if you want single instance store, if you want all those advanced features, that's all advanced, which means 64-bit OS and 64-bit hardware. So.
Well, is the sender on the remote DP supported on 2003?
I don't believe so. I believe the sender requirement is for 64-bit also. And then also, if you can't even do that, I have 10 or 11 labs, some of those that Sam tested out. We finally got them posted up to the TechNet virtual lab site. So if you don't want to play around, download anything over the wire, you can just go up to the TechNet virtual lab site on Tech Center for ConfigMgr. Go to virtual labs, and there's 10 or 11 labs there. Pick a lab, register for it. They give you 2 hours to play through the lab. It's a pre-configured environment up there virtually, and you got a lab doc there, script that you run through, just play around, or just play around without following the lab doc if you want. And I got them on deploying a single site and client, deploying a hierarchy, role-based administration, settings management, device management, software updates, basic software distribution, advanced software distribution, migrate from 2007 to VNext. So a whole ton of labs up there that you can play around with in a virtual environment. So those are all available. I don't care about tweeting and blogging and all that kind of crap, so I don't do it. So, but there is stuff available. So if you are into that stuff, I apologize. Oh crap! I said crap not twice. Now I'm on tape. So unless Sam knocked it off and it never turned back on, maybe that was it. Good. I might be safe.
We'll do some editing.
Oh, there's the tweeting and blogging type stuff. But I don't do it. You never find me blogging or tweeting or whatever other things you do. And if you ever see me on Facebook, it's only because my daughter hacked into my account and is posting pictures of me or whatever. So
I have a question about the site mode. Is it still advanced and the mixed mode? Or is that
advanced? We haven't used advanced
advanced.
standards since 2003. We still do have native and mixed mode. In Beta 1, we only support regular clients in mixed mode. In Beta 2, they will have native mode support for your full desktops, laptops, and servers if you want to use the PKI infrastructure. So yes, we'll still have both modes for mixed and native mode. So this is the new console. Go ahead.
On that one, so at the moment, I think ConfigMgr 2007 clients aren't supported over direct access. Is that right? It works, but it's not supported.
It is absolutely supported with SP2.
Oh, is it right?
Yes. So Service Pack 2 does support direct access clients. And same scenario with VNext. Okay, so obviously this is the VNext console. So it's not MMC based. So down in the lower left are your 4 wonder bars. As a high level overview, administration wonder bar is where you go to administer your site infrastructure. So setting up your site servers, setting up your secondary sites, adding site systems, adding roles, doing security, creating DPs, all that type of stuff. Generally, if you think about the MMC today, stuff when you expand your site management, expand your site code, and then inside site settings is under administration wonder bar. The software library wonder bar is where you go to control deployments of stuff to systems. Software updates, and operating system deployment. So those type of deployments are managed through software library. Monitoring is where you do monitoring. You monitor, you run queries, you look at your alerts, you run reports, you look at your status, compliance status for client health, your database replication using SQL replication, you look at that, your system status type stuff is all done through monitoring. And then assets and compliance, that is where you go to view your assets, user assets, system assets, and your assets being software, so asset intelligence inventory data, software metering data, and then compliance is for settings management, so the replacement of DCM is done through there. So once you select one of your wonder bars, then the navigation pane, which is up here, adjusts with the appropriate nodes depending on how much wonder bar you select. In the middle, you have a big results pane, which all the Wonder bars have a home page. It's called overview, but a home page. And on the far right-hand side is your action or task pane, which again, in that one screenshot you saw, beta 2, it goes away and it becomes an office ribbon in the future. Site hierarchy. In beta 1, not a whole lot changes. It's where you set your boundaries, you set your senders and addresses, so I won't bore you with that. In beta 2, we're adding a couple of new things there, but for the most part, it's configuring them. Site operations. So this is where I go to administer my sites. So it's very much like site management in the current product. So you can see I have one site. Now you can see when I selected the sites node, my results pane splits in two. A list view listing all of these sites, in this case I have one, and then a details pane, detailed information about the one site I got selected in the list view. And then task pane giving actions based on either the list view item selected or the navigation pane item selected. And it's kind of hard to see with the projector, but right now the top section here is gray, which is the same color as here, which means that these actions are performed on this item here. Now if I select white, select again, it's white and white. Versus down here is gray, to kind of match this over here. So we're trying to make it a little bit easier for you, but again, we'll switch this going to Office Ribbon in the future. So, as you guys play around with Beta 1, if you are playing around, one of the most common questions is, how do I set discovery? How do I configure my status components? How do I configure my client agents? And unfortunately, we hide them very well with tabs down at the bottom of your details pane when you select your site in the list view. So here's where I set my discovery methods and all the other things I want to do. So in Beta 2, this becomes a ribbon. So discovery method and so on. So if I go to discovery method, just you have the same 6 discovery methods. If I go system discovery, properties, it's essentially the same as the R3 stuff. So if I go to polling schedule, they're at Delta discovery, 5 minutes by default, and weekly full discovery now. And that's what MSIT is using for our VNext environment, which has 50-some thousand clients right now. The rest of them are all on R3, so we have to obviously run both of them for testing internally. But one cool thing is in VNext is if I go to my properties here for this LDAP path, it's down at the bottom. We now let you specify an account that Active Directory Discovery runs under. In the current product, it's always your system account for your computer. And if you have a remote forest, you may not be able to discover from that remote forest because you may not have the appropriate trust relationship. So now you can specify a user account that would be valid in that remote forest and be able to do discovery.
That's a very much mistaken. You also can change the path of the LDAP query as well.
Pardon?
You can also change the path of the LDAP query of an existing rule.
Yes.
Never used to be able to do that before. It used to be grayed out.
Yeah. We're also going to, in Beta 2, which again, this is the Beta 1 console, but in Beta 2, we're also going to have up here under site hierarchy, we're going to have Active Directory forests. So you'll be able to specify a forest that you want to do discovery from or management of, and we're going to allow you to publish your site's data into a different forest. So that's great if you have clients in it that you're managing in a different forest now. Right now you have to have a SLP, and you have to have a Windows infrastructure and so on, and a network access account. Now you won't have to, because we'll publish your site data in a different forest for those clients over there. You also notice that in discovery methods, we'll go back here, and we go back to properties, and polling schedule, that run the discovery as soon as possible, checkbox is gone because it confused everybody. They would click it, and then they would click OK, and then they go back in here, wait a minute, it's unchecked. They keep doing it, and we kept forcing runs of the full scan. So now we take that away and give you an action of run now. Say, hey, I want to force it to run right now. I can do so, but again, for the most part, you don't have to. Other than that, they're pretty much the same as what you're used to. So this would show you all of your sites from the database you're connected to and child. So if I'm sitting at the central administration site, the new central site, it would show me all sites in my hierarchy, and I can administer them all from the central site. If I'm sitting at child primary, show me my site, which I am, if I had child secondary sites, because that's as low as I go. Site system servers, that shows me all the site systems in my site or all the sites below me in the hierarchy. In this case, I only have one. But here's where I would go to add new roles to whatever site system I have. And you guys have seen all these roles before. We remove one role, and that's the reporting point. So the reporting point site system role has gone away because we don't support it anymore. And we now add in, Cancel, cancel, yes. And now we add in a few roles for you. So we replace reporting point with the reporting services point, which again we have in R2 and R3. We also have these two mobile device roles. These are for basically the replacement for MDM. So to allow you to take a mobile device and roll it into your site and manage it. And then down towards the bottom, software catalog, web service point and software catalog website point. This is for software delivery, and it allows you to replace, or it allows you to do software delivery to users. I'm not doing anything, am I? Does somebody else doing something? It's awfully noisy for whatever it is. Primary one, CM, software catalog. And I should have started this earlier and I didn't, so I'll just let him. So this is a web-based portal that allows users to go in there and find applications they want to install locally, as opposed to having to go to run advertised programs, which nobody really likes. So we have two different consoles now for that replace run advertised programs. This is the end user based portal for software for applications that are targeted to users. So available user-based applications will appear here. And you can do searching, you can browse by category or publisher far left. You can type in search box here. We have metadata that you get to populate that fills this in. You can go ahead and click this and get you more information about your application. So right now we're looking at category and all of them. I can go by publisher and I'll have Microsoft. I can go ahead and type in PDF. I can go to a search and it should say no results. Or I can type in, I think this one is tools. That's what I put in. Yeah, so tools, I can do searching that way. Because I don't have one app here. You guys can have hundreds of apps sitting here. So you don't want users scrolling through. I can click this hyperlink. It shows me more information about this app. I can have a documentation link, which is a website, intranet or internet, to go find more information out about this application. It requires approval. I can, on an application, I can specify that, make it available to users, but I have to have management approval before they can install it. So this button, instead of saying install, would say request. They would click the request button and pop up a little form, which is one box. Why do you need this application? You type it in. That goes back into your console immediately and appears, I'm kind of jumping ahead, but it appears here. And it shows you the application and what the username is. And then you can go ahead and select that approval request. You click approve or deny, type in your response, and it goes right back into their portal immediately. And then on their portal, that would change to, I can manage my software request here, and it will say it has been approved. And then that button changes from request to install. Then I click the install button and let it go off and do its installation. So very cool. So that's what those two site system roles are right here. Software catalog roles are to support that end user, the web-based portal. The other for system-based optional applications or software is, well, we have these combined in beta too, Software Center. So this is the replacement for a run advertising program for system-based advertisements or deployments. They would show here it's installed, give more metadata, see what software I've installed. Options. I can set my working hours. So I can set working hours and I can state to prompt during business hours or only ever install after working hours. I can say my computer's in presentation mode, so don't pop up those annoying announcements. Hey, your computer's going to restart in 10 minutes, or do software available type stuff. So you can configure that if you wish. There's a lot of cool things available. Anyway. And this is where I would go if I want to set my DP. And this is beta 1, so the DP on the site server doesn't give you these scheduling and throttling tabs, rate limit tabs, but in beta 2 it does. But if I had a remote DP, I'd have those other two tabs there. So go configure properties of the appropriate site system role, if there are any. Mobile device enrollment profile to enroll mobile devices in your environment. Client agent settings. So remember I showed you the R3 demo, we had 10 client agents there. We have none in VNext. So we actually have them, we just don't show them to you individually. Instead, what we have is one UI that if I want to change things hierarchy-wide, I go to modify default settings, and here's your advertised programs client agent, here's your device manager, or desired configuration manager client agent, computer client agent, hardware inventory client agent, and so on. I just go in here and configure what properties I want. So if I want inventory to be daily now, I would just go to inventory schedule and drop that down to daily. And this will affect all my clients in the hierarchy. In beta 2, the SMS def moff file goes away. So no more editing of a SMS def moff file in Notepad. Instead, what you'll have here is a, I think it says inventory classes, I'm trying to remember, inventory something like inventory classes, and you'll have an ellipsis button, you know, the dot, dot, dot. I click that box, and it pops up an editor for the SMS def moff. And you expand a class, you expand your attributes, click yes or no for inventory. So that's how hard it is to turn on, turn off stuff. We'll also have the ability of importing a moff file that you already have created. So you import it directly into our UI. And you have the ability of browsing to WMI attributes to automatically add them into the SMS def moff replacement without having to go and import stuff or create stuff manually. So.
And are the moff files dependent on the client settings that you create? So if you say create custom settings, can you apply a custom moff file to those settings? Or are they still site-wide?
No, so client agent, so your SMS dot, your inventory schedule and your inventory properties are all customizable as well. So yes, yes. So you can have different things you're inventorying on desktops versus servers. Absolutely.
Is configuration moff still there? Is that?
Configuration moff is still there. I'm not sure if it's still going to be there in beta 2, but it is still there right now. Yes. So I don't want to save these. Now I mentioned the scenario where I wanted to have servers and a different inventory schedule than my desktop. So what I do is I create a customized client agent settings. And there it is. Okay. I'll call data centers. And I'll add remove features, and I'll say inventory schedule. Oops, gotta enable inventory schedule and remote control, and users can change. And I'll say, there we go. Put this down to 1, and then permission required. Oops, that's not permission required. I wanted, where did it go? I clicked the wrong thing there. Ask permission, that's what I wanted. There we go. And then ask for permission and set that to false. So I save these custom settings, and now I just say assign. And I punch it to the collection of my data center servers. Notice whenever we show you collections now, as far as targeting, we break them up into user collections and device collections. The top 4 are the built-in collections. The bottom one is custom that I created. And we also show you the number of members of the collection in parentheses. So no longer can dumb admin say, I didn't know that all systems were 10,000 clients. They may not read it and see it, but it's there. And also in the summary page, we tell you the same thing. All systems, 10,315 in parentheses, so they'll know. And then if I want to target the users, I can do that. You can also target custom client agent settings to users as opposed to systems if you want. So just do that, and then next policy retrieval, they'll go ahead and download this policy and implement it.
Wally, sorry. If you had one for users and one for systems, which ones takes precedence over?
Well, that's what this little order number here is for. So I can, as an admin, I can control which one takes precedence over another one. So I move them up or move them down in priority. So we have a conflict resolution process there that you get to control. It may not be just users, systems, it may be multiple collections that I'm in. You get the same type of scenario. So yeah. Okay, security and permissions. So administrative users. So this is, I browse the AD, find the user or group I want to add in, give them security, grab the user account, add them in. We then assign security roles to that user account, whether again it's a user or a group. The security roles are right here. We have 13 roles built in. And if you select one of the roles, we give you a description down in the details pane as to what that role entails. But you don't go in there and look at class rights or instance rights. You look at those templates. The templates have all these class rights built into them. And we show you how many users are in that role, etc. Now, if you want to create your own custom roles, you would take an existing role, you do a copy security role, and I'll say London, oops, I don't have to spell correctly, and then I get down to the instance, or the class right level. I don't want you to be able to create a advertisement, which again is deployment now. So I can turn on or turn off those individual instances I want, and I can save my role. And this is global data, so this replicates to every other site in my hierarchy, and then anybody can use that London security role and assign it to their own individual users that they would have.
Does it, does that the wizard there deal with sort of effectively like inherited or expected rights? Because certain class rights need other rights in review to be able to work. Does that work that one out?
This has everything in there. In beta 1 we don't have it all worked out, so in beta 2 we will have it all worked out, yes, for that. So right now in beta 1, some of these roles don't give you the rights that you need to do the job based on the role. Others give you more rights than you need, and we know that in beta 1. In fact, we have some patent known issues about that up on the Connect side, but yeah, we'll work that out. So the security role is what actions can you, an admin, perform, and then the security scope is onto which objects can you perform those actions. And so when I create a new user, I have to specify for that user. I created Jamie and Randy. So for Randy, I gave him the remote tools role, and he has a default security scope. So he can run remote tool stuff on any collection that has the default scope on it. Well, if I want to adjust that, and I don't want Randy seeing everything, I'll create a new security scope. Cardinal place. And I create a different one for TCP. And now I'll say Randy as a user, security scopes, I'll say he can do remote control on Cardinal place, but not TDP. And let me go to Jamie, and Jamie is going to TDP and not Cardinal. And now, let me go to software library, and you see I have 4 applications here. And there you go. Now you see I have 4 applications. And I'll take these 2 apps, and I'll do a set security scopes. And I'll say these are TDP, so Jamie should see them. And I go to assets compliance. And here's my 5 collections. I'll say this is the collection for Randy, I think it was. I'll set security scope and Cardinal place. So he's only going to be able to see this one collection. He's not going to see the other 4. And Jamie's only going to see those 2 applications, not all 4. So again, create a user, specify the actions they can perform, which is the security role, and then onto which objects they can perform those actions, which is the security scope. Now if I go ahead and launch off the console as Jane, oops, I got to try that again. Different user. Jamie with my super secret password. 8 characters, you can probably guess what it was. So she had application deployment role, was it? I forget which role. She had, yeah, application deployment role. And so she doesn't see everything here because of security permissions. She doesn't see users or roles or scopes. If she goes to the software library, remember there were 4 applications there. And she's only going to see the 2 applications that have that scope assigned to her. I didn't change any collection stuff for her. Actually, I took away the 1 collection. So I gave device collections. None of them have the Cardinal, I think it was Cardinal I gave her, Cardinal place security scope on, so she didn't see any collections. If I go and now launch off as Randy remote, oops, and I didn't create those names, that's marketing. Different user, Randy, password. So he's remote tools is his role. he's going to see a whole lot less. He's only got 2 1 bars down here, so he's not going to have monitoring and software compliance, security and software library. Didn't have those. And he has fewer nodes in here, no queries, and so on. But in absence of compliance, he's only going to see the 1 collection of ConfigMgr clients. And then the only thing he can do on those is, well, whatever roles instance rights he has there, but one of those is use remote tools. So very close. That's how we get around the multiple primary sites for segmenting users from different systems, and also the client agent settings to make things much easier for you. It's through security roles and permissions. Distribution points. One of the cool things here, we show you disk space on the DP.
One question about the security. Is it tied into AD groups or something? So
Yes.
if you have administrators that create their objects, other people in the same group will have rights to do that, to delegate it.
You can add in users or groups to your roles, and then set the appropriate, as administrative users, and set the appropriate roles on those accounts that you added. So you can add in a AD group as a administrative user, give them a role or multiple roles, and then you can do the same thing with users.
The objects they create,
And objects they create,
they are only accessible to themselves or the whole group?
it depends upon what rights you gave them and what scopes they're members of. They wouldn't be able to, I don't believe they can create objects that are outside of their scope. So they would be limited to the scope of things, the scope they're in, and then an admin like myself, Uber admin, would have to go in there and, okay, I want to make this available to TVP, even though it was only configured for Cardinal. Okay. And then migration, I'll show you migration after our tea break. We'll go through a whole migration, but this gives you a kind of a scorecard of where you are in your migration from ConfigMgr 2007 to vNext. So here's what your ConfigMgr 2007 hierarchy looks like as far as primary sites. Here's how many objects you have in 2007 total, how many have been migrated, how many you're saying you don't want to migrate over. Here's how many clients you have in 2007 and how many migrated up to vNext. And here's how many migration jobs you've created, or not how many total, but how many are in progress, how many completed, and how many failed. And I'll walk you through that process in the next presentation and demos of that.
Wally, quick question about DPs. Do you still have the no SMS on drive sort of hidden file, it's a 0-byte file? Or is it a bit smarter over sort of...
We're a whole lot smarter than that now. When you, oops, not here. It's not here. Oh, right here. Use specific partition. You can designate the partition you want to use, kind of like you do with branch DPs today. So yeah, you can do that. And also, allow administrator to manually copy packages to this DP. So pre-staging of distribution points. Standard ones like you have with branch DPs today. So, but we still do have, at least in beta 1, the no SMS on drive. I don't know if they're going to get rid of that in beta 2, but right now it's still there, but you can now designate that. I guess they're still going to keep it for other site system roles, because not all the roles have that. So software library, we're supposed to break at, I forget what time. You remember, Cliff? It was 3:45.
3:45, yeah.
The 3:45, okay.
Yeah.
So I got 37 minutes. Okay. I think, yeah. So applications. So here's 4 applications I created. Applications have deployment types on them. Oh, by the way, we still have packages. So for those of you that want to live in the past, relive your glory days, you can still do so. So you create a package, you can create a program. So this package has a program down here. And the one program is an MSI exec. And you can have multiple MSI execs with different options, /QB, /TN, /I, and whatever options you need there. You can create multiple of them if you wish to. But none of this advanced stuff we're talking about, state-based, deployment types, requirement rules, single instance store, all that stuff is all for applications, not packages. We have packages there for 2 reasons. One, for those of you that want to take some time to learn the application model, and you can still do your software delivery like you know how to do so today. And secondly is when you do the migration, that we'll see later on, when you migrate from 2007, your packages become packages over here. So we don't convert them over to applications. You have to manually do that process. Okay, so applications. Here's a couple of these say multiple deployment types. So I have a couple of deployment types. So I select Adobe Reader 9, gives me base information. Tell me my distribution point status right here as well. Revision 3. I have revision history. So I can go back and see when people made changes to my application and something stopped working right about this time, so I can go back and revert back to a previous revision of my application I know was working. I can go back and look and see, did a view and go look at the different tabs appropriate here and see if I can figure out what they did wrong. I don't think we highlighted what was changed. But we have that. Deployment types. This one has 2 deployment types created. One is MSI based and one is app V based, as you see here. There we go. So if I go and look at the properties, on the content just says where your source files are. Peer-to-peer content distribution has branch cache support. So if you have Windows 7 and Windows Server 2008 DPs and clients, you can use branch cache. Programs, here's one program I got created. Detection methods. One of the cool things with applications is if I as an admin state that Adobe Reader 9 has to be installed. Well, one of the first things we do is Adobe Reader 9 already installed? If so, no sense trying to install it through ConfigMgr. We don't care how it got installed. Your intent as the admin was Adobe Reader's installed. So you can look at this product code and run MSI, check and see, is it already there? Okay, then ConfigMan doesn't have to push it out. You can also use a custom script if you want to get more complicated than just looking at product code. Maybe it has to be product code, and you guys have custom settings that you set in the registry. So look at your registry script and validate that. Requirements. So here's 2 requirements. You can only install Adobe Reader 9 to the MSI if your total physical memory is greater than or equal to 1 gig, and free disk space on any drive is greater than or equal to 500 meg. Here's the list of built-in requirement rules for systems: 80 sites, CPU, free space, OU, processors, OS, language, ConfigMan site, total physical memory. We also have user. So I would set this one to only install the MSI if the primary device equals true, that user. Otherwise, don't install locally. And I'll show you how to set that here coming up. Dependencies.
Can I ask a question about this?
No. Yes, go ahead.
As part of the asset management, you can when you update your catalog, the minimum requirements published that are published, downloaded automatically. Can you just point it to that rather than having to type them in manually here?
No, we don't. That's a very good suggestion. Nobody's ever asked that before. The problem is that those hardware requirements are not sure that they're how accurate they are. And you can't change our built-in ones, but if you create custom ones, that's a very good idea. Now, what we do allow you to do is when you go in here and you can create custom and custom condition, and one I use in one of my labs is system manufacturer. It's a Windows and it's setting versus expression. I'll show you that in a minute. But here's all the different things you can look for as far as custom settings. Most people could use WMI or a script and some registry stuff. It'll say WMI and it's a string. And in this case it's under SIMD2. Oops. And the class is Win32 BIOS. And it's manufacturer. So I create that custom condition, and then when it's done saving, there we go. Now it gets saved, and now I can go ahead and say custom manufacturer equals, in my case it's American Megatrends Inc. period. And now it gets added in as well. So let's say I want to take these 4 different ones and use them multiple times. What I could do is, instead of listing them individually, create a custom condition, and now instead do expression, and then add in those 4 clauses I want, save it as one name, and it gets saved out as a global condition, and re-add that to all my other applications. So we don't let you import from hardware requirements that are in asset intelligence, but we do let you create them one time and then resave them for other applications. So whatever you change here goes into global conditions in your console. We have like 14 built in. And then system manufacturer, one I just created, says custom. And then it's not read-only, so obviously it can be modified, where the rest of them are all read-only. So I can reuse those attributes later on. So I can go ahead and put in my requirements. I can go ahead and specify dependencies. This one didn't have any dependencies, but let's go ahead and go look at the other deployment type I had for Adobe Reader 9. Deployment types, the app V. In this case, I have requirements. It's one of these operating systems, and dependency of the Microsoft App V client. So you can't run a virtual application unless your client supports virtual apps. So have a deployment type for the virtual applications. And I have one for 64-bit, one for 32-bit, which have their own requirement rules on them, looking for the 64-bit OS or 32-bit OS. So you can have that. You also have catalog. This is the data that would appear in the software catalog. So the end user portal for selecting applications. So notice all the languages, and we're only in the A's, and that's the first screen. So VNext is all Unicode. So no more separate primary sites for single byte character sets versus double byte character sets versus different languages. You only have to have one type of site now. It's all Unicode. And so we're supposed to be supporting all the languages that Windows supports, which is, I don't know how many, a whole bunch.
Do you still have the, do you still have the source list update that's in the client at the moment?
It's not in Beta 1, but in Beta 2 it's supposed to be there, yes. So the Windows source list for...
Has it been enhanced? In the sense, because at the moment, basically, the client updates every single source for every single package, whereas it's not smart enough to say the only ones that I've got installed. So,
correct. I don't know if they've got that fixed, but I know they're adding the source list capabilities back in Beta 2.
okay.
So hopefully they are getting smart enough about doing that. In Beta 2, we're going to have a relationship viewer here. So that you'll be able to, when you look at an application, you'll be able to it'll draw out a dependency tree for you, showing you some of the requirements as well as the dependent applications in a hierarchical format, like a Visio type thing. It's not Visio. I don't know of any integration with it, but be able to draw that out so you can more easily see how complex your application's gotten. So you create an application, you create the appropriate deployment types, and then when you're all set, you deploy the application. You don't deploy a program like you do today, where you advertise a program for your package. You deploy an application. And then we look at the deployment types to figure out which ones should be installed or run locally based on the requirement rules you have. So you just deploy your applications now, as opposed to deploying or advertising a program. So something like this has been deployed, so it shows you very quickly what your percentage success is on those. And you can also see in the monitoring node, if you go here, and it gives you more what you'll use to like the software distribution homepage, what your success is. Or if I go here, success or requirements not met. So I mentioned those requirements, and we come back and tell you what the status is or state of any computers or assets that don't meet the requirements. In this case, requirements not met, and program rejected, operating system. I think it is. Yeah, wrong platform. This will all be a single UI in Beta 2. Right now it's 3 different nodes for OSD and standard applications. Oops, software library. Approval request, I showed you that, global conditions. Okay, that's enough on that. I got a half an hour. And I haven't even got to the other 3 nodes yet, or the other 2 nodes. Software updates, again, pretty much what you're familiar with from ConfigMgr 2007. We give you not a software distribution or software updates homepage, but inside your repository, we show you status or compliance of individual updates and what their state is, the basic information, and if they've been deployed at all. This one's not been, whereas this one obviously has been deployed. You can tell by the summary tab that basically I'm 100% compliant. The one unknown there is my collection has a Windows mobile device in it, and you can't deploy software updates to a Windows mobile device, so it doesn't know how to report compliance back. So I should have just obviously excluded Windows Mobile from my collection. But anyway, so you select the updates you want, you create an update group out of those updates, and then you go ahead and deploy your update group through deployment packages. But very much like the same. So what's really changed here is automatic grouping rules. So I have an automatic grouping rule that says, in this case, updates. Whenever I see an update with the custom severity, and I've got all these different types of attributes or properties I can look at, but whenever I see an update with custom severity, go ahead and automatically deploy it, enable deployment on successful evaluation of the rule to an existing update group called Patch Tuesday Critical Updates. Scheduling, I said deploy them automatically 11 months in the future. Realistically, you want them done, whatever your time frame is, weekly or every 2 weeks, something like that. And the default is every 2 weeks is mandatory. I just put 11 months in the future because I wanted to have some non-compliant stuff in here in my demos. User experience, do you want to suppress restarts? Do you want to ignore maintenance windows? Notifications are completely hidden. MOM maintenance mode will work in VNX, where it doesn't always work in 2007. They gave us the right API to use now, so we'll do that. Do you want to, if you're on slow links, how do you want to get the updates or not? Do you want to allow fallback to unprotected EPs, language of updates you want to deploy, and whether this is an app-required update? So anyway, what I did is I went to my repository and I went to Universal, and I think it's Universal Updates 1 and 2. I went to that and I went to my properties and custom severity. I just set these two to critical updates, the critical custom severity. And so they automatically met the rule. So it created an update group called Auto Update Group, Patch Tuesday Critical Updates. And it has been deployed, but again, it hasn't hit the deadline yet. It's not been 11 months. And it created a package called Lab Critical Updates, and got these two updates that I synchronized in there. So in beta 1, we only do the evaluation on a sync with your parent, which would be WSUS, with whatever your update source is. In beta 2, we're going to give you the ability of scheduling, run all your auto update group rules on a schedule and see if anything's changed, and go ahead and kick these off and do the appropriate deployment.
So you have no update lists anymore?
Update groups, or what you know is update lists.
What is the deployment policy then?
What is the deployment policy?
Yeah, like
I create an update.
Deployment management.
I create an update group, and then I go ahead and deploy that update group to a collection of clients. It's the same thing you do today in your current product.
Well, update lists are like favorites of updates, and you create deployments from there.
Right.
Yeah.
Same thing here. You create updates, you put them in an update group instead of update list, and you deploy the update group. So same thing. So you would just go create your these updates, and then I go update group, and I go create a new update group, or I can do edit membership and say I want to add them to that update group. And this will change in the future a little bit. Oh, one other thing that's changed in software updates, that not in the slides, supersedence. We're allowing you to control whether or not you want us to deploy superseded updates. Today you have no choice. You can't deploy superseded updates. We'll give you the ability when you install your software update point to say, yes, I want to deploy superseded updates, and for how long you want to be able to allow a deployment of a superseded update. So give you a little more control over that.
Well, superseded or expired?
Superseded.
Superseded get deployed now.
Not if it's been superseded. You can if it's been superseded by a service pack, but not by another update.
Expired, that's going to be still not deployed.
Not to my knowledge.
For the reporting of superseded updates, will it take the previous update deployment statistics and move it into the superseded
I have no idea. I don't know if we're automatically switching over the reporting stuff over. I'd have to go ask Jason. So if you want to email me later on, I can try and find the answer for you. Operating system deployment, I already mentioned a few changes there. The one thing I can show you here is create task sequence media, and here's option 4 for pre-stage media, which I was going to show you in R3 and 4 locked up on me. So, and if I were to go through it, it makes me create a name for it, and my C:\/ grid .wimi. And then if I go here, it makes me supply the, you're basically like a Pixie boot scenario. Go on and enable unknown computer support, password protection. and then I specify my boot WIM, and I specify my OS package, that WIM file, and it combines them into a custom hybrid WIM that I then burn onto media, C:\access hybrid.wim, get that to my OEM and deploy it, and set the task sequence media to OEM media type so it knows not to do the hardest stuff because it's already been done. Somebody wasn't happy. I think I heard some booing. I guess it wasn't good enough for them. Oh well. Monitoring, queries are exactly the same, so nothing really new and unique in queries. Reporting is all SRS based. So let me go ahead and show you. This is beta 1. We have 397 reports built in beta 1. And you can do filtering on it. So I go to client status, the client status summary, and run that report. It runs it in the context of SRS. You have subscriptions. If you're not familiar with that in SRS, that allows you to schedule a report to be run at a specific date and time and to export the results into some type of file format, like a web page or a CSV file or whatever.
Well, is there any big gotchas in the views at all if you're writing your own reports?
Big gotchas in the views for VNext?
Yeah.
We don't have it fully documented, but we're hoping to maintain as much parity as possible with the current stuff. You'll see in the next presentation I'm going to do on migration, we don't migrate over reports currently. In beta 1, we're not sure we're going to do it beta 2. So as of right now, our statement is you're recreating everything because it's a new reporting model and you go to model-based reports. So this is the client status summary report. So imagine you would like these type of reports because you like fancy looking things. So this is my client health. I'm 89% client healthy, and the reason it's not 90 or 100% is because of the Windows mobile device. It's my target collection. So if I change my collection to not say ConfigMgr clients, which it is right now, but instead go to all desktops and servers, then I should be 8 out of 8. And then down below, client activity. It's not quite as impressive. I'm only 11% active, and the reason that is the other 8 images I don't have the other 8 images with me. So they've not been up and running on my environment for like 4 months. So they're obviously inactive clients. Now, so you have all those different type of reports you can run. You can do fancy things with SRS-based reports. Now, client health is down here.
Can I discuss another question, sorry, about SRS? That looks like it's 2008 only, because I'm sure those controls are only 2008.
I can give you the requirements. This is, you asked me before about R3 in SRS. This is the next SRS, which is 2008 SP1 with CU6 right now. That may be something later by the time we ship. But yes, currently in VNext, we're Windows Server 2008, 64-bit, and SQL 2008 SP1 with cumulative update 6 required. And currently in beta 1, if you're going to play around, you cannot, repeat, you cannot use SQL 2008 R2. It does not work with our beta 1. It will work in beta 2. So it is absolutely SQL 2008 SP1 with CU6.
Wally, on the same basis, 2007 with R3 doesn't support R2 either, right? SQL?
Yes, we do.
You do?
We do support SQL 2008 R2 with ConfigMgr 2007.
Okay, but not with beta 1 of
VNext. Not with, I would say beta 1, but if you want to say beta 1, that's all right. Not with beta 1 of VNext, correct. We will have it fixed with beta 2, yes, or beta 2 for you guys. I'll try and remember. I've been saying scheduling for you. Actually, I like that better than schedule. So when I say it back in the States, people look at me weird, so, especially my family. But they look at me weird for a whole lots of reasons. So this is the home page for client status. So it just gives me the same type of stuff, and then a little chart in here tells you the last time it's summarized. In beta 1, we only summarize every 24 hours. You have no control, you can't force it. And in beta 2, we're going to give you the ability of scheduling when you want summarization to occur. I can change the collection I want to look at. If I go in a little more detail, client health, it also shows me remediation. If I've had any client remediations, and if so, how many have been successful versus failure on client remediations. And that means I had to fix something, I had to change something. Client activity, same type of thing. So obviously big red pie chart doesn't look good, unless that's a cherry pie. That's okay. But one slice is moldy, so that's not so good. Now what we're looking at here is client agent settings. Here's how often we're expecting clients to send in data, very much like the R2 release with the client status reporting, 7 days. Thresholds, this is my alerting. I can specify my SLA is 95% and alert me if I get below 95% of my client health. And then what my warnings and critical are for remediation failures or inactive clients. Now in the current product, if we have inactive clients, we think clients are inactive, we go ping them across the wire, and if they're live on the network, then we can do some Win32 API calls and WMI calls looking for service state and so on. We no longer do that in vNext. Instead, we let you integrate with Active Directory. See, the last time this computer had logged into AD, not the user, but the computer itself. So no more pinging across the network. So a little more efficient. And that threshold is sitting right here. I don't know how well you can see it there. There's a yellow line right above my mouse. That's my 95% threshold for client activity. Database replication is going to be not very exciting right here because I only have one site. But when I load up my next images, I'll have multiple sites. So you see database replication status up and down. So it tells you exactly the last time you synchronized your two sites through SQL replication. And the same thing here with the sites node. Not very exciting, so I'll have a single site. But in my next demo, I'll have different images. I'll have a parent, a simple site, child site, and then a secondary site below it, and you'll see a mapping of it. Not links and all that kind of good stuff, just the relationship. Okay. And then let's go move over to assets and compliance. Assets and compliance. I didn't show you this, but on software updates, you have alerting. On applications, you have alerting. It's not there yet on client status, I don't think. No, you'll have alerting for the SLA not being met. And then on compliance settings, you have alerts. And I'll come back here. This is the last thing I'm talking about is alerts. But we'll have those alerts typing, hey, you're raising awareness that something ain't working the way you expected it to work. So I wanted to remember that I forgot to tell you about the other things. So user collections, here's the only two user collections we have. Now I mentioned that user device affinity only deploy if the logged on user is the primary device. How I would set that is numerous different ways. One way, I could go to the user himself, let's say user 1, and I can say edit primary devices. And right now this shows that I'm already associated with Windows Mobile. When you enroll a mobile device, you have to designate a primary user device. So that got set during mobile device enrollment. It also says that, hey, in the last 90 days, client 1 is logged in, user 1 is logged into client 1. And it's saying, hey, so that may be his primary device. And if so, I can go ahead and select that and then click out. If I'm not quite so sure what the computer name is, I can do a search, client, it'll show me all the computers that have client in them somewhere, and I can manually add them. So I can manually set primary devices at the user. And obviously a single user can have multiple primary devices, as probably most of you do. I know Microsoft, most of us do have. I could also go to the computer, I'll go to all systems, and I'll say XP client, and then go to set edit primary users, and then here let me go ahead and put in user 2 as the primary device. So I can set it on the computer, and I can have multiple primary users of a single device. So a shared workstation with multiple shifts running, 8-hour shifts. So I can do it that way as well.
So is that a fully manual process? Or is there any automatic association?
Have you let me finish talking yet? I've only shown you 2 ways so far, and we actually have like 8 different ways. So the automated method, for those that you want to automate, is manage user device affinity relationships. So you can configure through client agent settings. There's 5 different settings there for in the bracket that says UDA, user device affinity. And based on how you configure that, this is saying, we detected that these are probably relationships you want to set up. These users have logged on here for the appropriate period of time. I can select them all and approve, or I can select them all and cancel or reject, do individually. That's another way. Windows Mobile, you saw that. OSD, we automatically set a user device affinity with OSD. You can also import, so if you have a CSV file, which I know you guys probably have all created, a CSV file that has one column for users with the user name and one column for device with the appropriate device names. You can import that. And that was admin1 for primary 1, I think. So if I go to primary 1, it should have admin1 now set as a primary user. I can do it that way, and also says, hey, administrators logged on here. And there's also, in the end user portal, if you enable this, My Systems, the end user can go here and say, this is my primary computer. So it's not, as you can see, it's not enabled. It's a custom client agent setting to turn this on, and it's not enabled, so I can't set it there. So by the user, by the system, by the end user, the automatic relationships, OSD, Windows Mobile, import, and usage relationships, like 8-9 different ways. That's as automated as we get. So hopefully one of those will help.
So is there any calls that you can maybe, like remote calls, that if we wrote into our scripting or our login engine or like that, that we could inject that user as being primary?
This whole thing is controlled by the SDK.
Right.
So absolutely with the SDK, you can do that. Before you ask, we're not creating PowerShell commandlets for this. We might in the SDK sometimes, but we're not writing things specifically PowerShell, but some of our MVPs have already created a bunch of PowerShell commandlets for Beta 1. So.
Can you talk quickly, just very briefly, about the integration between VNX and the pilots? Is that moving along? I mean, is it
it is moving along. Somebody was just, Dave was telling me they're releasing a integration pack in the...
This month?
Pardon? This month? Okay, this month on it.
Okay, cool.
I was actually in Johannesburg. I was with one of the Impulse guys, but we had different schedules, so I was never able to sit in his session to see what he said about our integration. So I don't know. I don't know. But I know there is stuff coming, and obviously you can do the SDK route as well. You can also, there is integration with Service Manager, so they can obviously capture some of our data and pull it in there and do some of the work. The approval that I showed you, the admin approval for applications, there is, obviously they have much better workflow than we have, a real simple workflow here, and you can integrate with that as well for that.
Certain application or have that email to the user or something like that?
Our stuff is only through the admin console, but with the integration and the SDK, you can do whatever you want to with it. So you can email an admin, have them go in there and do the workflow, or you can integrate with Service Manager. But our stuff is only the one little UI that I showed you. That's all we have built in. Software inventory, this is being relabeled to Asset Intelligence, and it will have the normal AI homepage that you used to in 2007 and Beta 1. It doesn't have it. And other than that, it's exactly the same as what you guys know for Asset Intelligence. They're cleaning up the detection rules for some of the new stuff like Office 2010 and Windows 7 type stuff. There's some issues there with detection, and they're getting all those hotfixes built in and fixed into Beta and this product as well. The hardware requirements that everyone was asking about here, you can still create these. And you have all the reports they just don't show here. They're showing the monitoring reporting node there. Software metering is exactly the same. So nothing changes in software metering for VNext. We still want to create the disabled rules based on usage, and then you go ahead and enable them or create your own rules and enable them. And compliance. So compliance is the last area. So compliance, what you guys used to know as DCM, is now called compliance settings. And here you can see it created an alert for me. It's not a workflow like OpsMan gives you with alerts. All it is to raise awareness to the admin, hey, something didn't work right. In this case, it says my standard desktop configuration compliance is only 37%, and I set the threshold to 90%, so it didn't meet the threshold, so it raised an alert. I'll show you how I turn that on. If I click the critical hyperlink down here, it takes me to the monitoring node, which shows me what some additional information about that alert. I can close it, which just means, hey, yeah, I know why it's there. Just go ahead and turn it off. I don't want to see it anymore. Or I can close it with comments. Yeah, close it, but here, put this other text in there to let me know if I go back and look at this, what the alert, the alert was there and why I closed it. And I can have it reevaluated. If I click configure, it takes me to the administration homepage, and hopefully we'll get all these fixed in Beta 2, so they're all in a single workflow. But it goes here, and I go look at properties, and oh yeah, maybe 90% was a little aggressive. Maybe I ought to have 75% in my environment. Now, obviously, 75 is still way above my 37% that I have, but I can go ahead and change that. So that's what the alerting thing looks like. It doesn't page anybody, it doesn't email anybody, it just pops up the little alert in the console so that you have some idea that something ain't going right.
Will there be integration with Ops Manager for all these different alerts?
That would be very cool, wouldn't it? If there was integration with Ops Manager for that.
Considering you're both system center, it would be awesome.
Yes, that would be great if we did that. The guys were scoping out the management pack. They're actually scoping it out as we speak, so I'm hoping that they're going to do that. I mentioned that when one of the PM who now owns that, he's in Shanghai. He was in Redmond a month or so ago, and he sat down and talked to me about management pack, and I said, yeah, you ought to do that, so I'm hoping they will. Anyway, so what this CI looks like, so I went and created 4 different CIs here, 1 for a required application, and 2 for operating systems, and 1 for Windows mobile device for testing. And the requirement, this is required app, so just looking at the fact that it's there, and it's just looking at Windows detection rules, MSI. So very simple. For my remediation, so I went in here to Windows 7, I created this configuration item. I said all Windows 7 on 64-bit clients. Its setting is called Enable Remote Desktop. If I edit that, it's looking at the registry, HQ local machine, system, current control set, control, terminal server, and the value I'm looking at is F-deny TS connections. That's what I'm looking at. And I want to see what the value of that is. My compliance rules for that is that I'm expecting that to be a value of 0. So that's the registry value that turns on or turns off remote desktop. And we ship the OS with a value of 1 there, which turns it off. So I'm saying my corporate standard is that remote desktop is enabled by default. And if it's not, and if I'm sitting right here, monitor only, just report back non-compliance. But with BNX, we now have remediation, so I can enforce. Enforce says, if that value, F-deny TS connections, is not set to a 0, enforce it to make it a 0.
What happens if it doesn't exist?
If it doesn't exist, then I don't know. I don't remember. I'll have to go back and look at my, see the presentation I had on that. I think if it doesn't exist right now in Beta 1, we just leave it as a compliant system because it's not setting correctly. I think in Beta 2, you can force us to go ahead and create that and set it the way you want it. We're making a lot of changes in compliance settings in Beta 2 as well. For example, one of the things here, when I went and created this here, there's no browsing here. It's all typing. In Beta 2, we're going to have browsing. So I can browse the registry setting or value. I can browse to the WMI setting I want and import that way without having to type everything. And you guys have seen me type, so there's a good chance of my rule's not working very well. So I can be in a monitoring mode, so I can be in the ConfigMgr 2007 mode here, or I can be in the VNext mode. But again, we only remediate if it's script, custom script you have, WMI, or registry settings. Then we go ahead and automatically remediate. So I configure what I want the CI to do, then I take that CI and I put it in a baseline. And here's my standard desktop configuration. Go to its properties. And then on my evaluation conditions, here's where I set the alert. Notify me if my percentage of compliance is less than 90. So I could have set it to 35%, I would have been compliant if I wanted to. And then on the assignment, all desktops and servers, that way it didn't hit the Windows mobile device. Remediate non-compliant rules when supported. So if it can be, again, registry, script, or WMI, then we can go ahead and remediate automatically. So I enable remediation in the CI, and then I tell it to remediate in the assignment for that baseline when I create it.
Does that mean the remediation for a registry key can only be set as a registry key, not with a script, for example?
So I detect non-compliance by a registry, and can I do remediation through a script? I think you would have to, my guess is you're going to have to then do your check through the script as well, and then remediate that way. You guys will have to email me these questions I don't know the answers to, and I can find out the answers and email you back, for sure.
Wally, when did you set what the remediation was there? So how did you know to set it to 1 and not, Lamont or something?
How do I do what?
How did you know, how did the remediation know to set the value to 1 rather than 7 or 42 or whatever?
Well, it doesn't ever set it to 1. In this case, my configuration item said to set it to a value of 0.
So you're checking to see whether it is 0, and if it's not, it sets
Correct.
it to 0. That's right.
Correct. My remediation is, I'm expecting this to be a value here, and if I say enforce, if it's not a 0, make it a 0. Right. Yeah.
What if your rule, can your rules be, instead of equals, a range or between? We say we got equals there. What's on the drop down?
Oh, and here.
So like between. So you.
Yep, one over right there.
Mm.
But currently not, there's your between.
So then you can't enforce it.
Yeah, then you can't enforce in that scenario. There's got to be one of those values, so.
Back to the script.
Now for the Windows Mobile guy, there's a bunch of built-in configuration items for Windows Mobile. And what this one was, I just went in here and different types we have and compliance rules. I'm going to give it a name. Is whatever is how you spell test. I know how to spell it. I'm just being lazy. Just put something there so I can move on. And then rule types, crap, where's my full list? Just got to create, I can't do it on an existing one. Got to create a brand new one. So you can just go here and create configuration item. Windows client server, oops. Operating system, Windows Mobile, and we'll have support for Nokia and whatever else we happen to support in the future for other items. And then here's all the ones that are built in right now. And I'm sure more will be coming in beta too. But what I did is I took password policy, and then here's my different settings that it creates, password type, strong versus pin, and so on, minimum history, or history, idle time, how long I want it to be, and then whether I want to remediate or not. And so I created that, cancel yes, for this guy here, and I said to enforce. My client didn't have it turned on. I created my baseline, assigned it. After retrieving policies, a message popped up saying, hey, password policies are now enforced. Maybe put in a strong PIN, strong password on it. We allow you to keep revisions, or you can view your XML. You can directly import from ConfigMgr 2007, and we'll modify the schema to the current version of the schema because it is different between 2007 and vNext. Export, and a lot of the areas of the product we're going to have exporting capabilities, so you can create applications in your lab environment, export them, and then import them into your production environment without having to recreate stuff. So it's not in all the feature areas right now. We're hoping in beta 2 we'll have all the feature areas so that you can do the export and import of all those different scenarios. We also do have in our CIs, we have revision history here, our revisions, so you can track by revision. You can say, oh, I only want revision 2 of an of the CI, or I can say I don't care what the revision is, as long as it's there and it's compliant, I'm fine. So it's some additional capabilities. Big thing is remediation, and then some of the new browsing capabilities we'll have in beta 2. So.
Is there also support for current user?
For
Current user, the registry current user.
yes, we're going to have support for browsing HQ local current, or HQ current user key. Yes. Yep. Okay. So just to recap, or a couple minutes short for our get break. So a couple things. We kind of hit this in the next presentation on migration, but 64-bit. So Windows Server 2008, as of right now, no service pack requirements, no R2 requirement. Those could change by the time we release. But beta 1 is Windows Server 2008, 64-bit. SQL Server 2008, SP1, CU6. All your site systems are 64-bit with Windows Server 2008, with the exception of a standard EP, can be 32-bit, and can still be Windows Server 2003, 32-bit. Still support 32-bit clients. The minimum client platform is Windows XP Service Pack 3 for a 32-bit client, and Windows XP Service Pack 2 for a 64-bit client. No more Windows 2000 client support. Sorry. And then we go all the way up to the current OSs. And then obviously whatever mobile devices we wind up supporting. And SRS integrations to make sure you're working on that. So those are the big things to start looking at now that you guys can start preparing for the future. And I'll mention a few more things in the migration session that we'll do right after our tea break. So it